than 100,000 people have marched in solidarity with Palestine in Australian capital cities for the fifth consecutive weekend since Israel's bombardment began in early October. Each weekend, the protest crowds have grown larger. There are at least 50,000 each in Melbourne and Sydney this weekend. So, what have the rallies achieved so far? The main objective of this protest is to end the violence in Gaza, where more than 11,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli airstrikes, more than 4,000 of which were children. The most immediate way to stop the death toll from rising is for Israel to agree to a ceasefire, which is basically a truce or a pause in fighting to allow both parties to negotiate terms to end a war. Israel has said over and over that it will not agree to a ceasefire, nor will it stop bombing Gaza until Hamas agrees to releasing the 200 or so Israeli hostages it's held since October 7. In Australia, our government has so far refused to officially call for a ceasefire. 2 weeks ago, when the UN General Assembly voted on a humanitarian truce in Gaza, which is the first step towards a ceasefire, Australia abstained from voting. The motion was passed with overwhelming support, but it's not binding. Instead, it applies significant political pressure, but effectively not from Australia. Since then, several Labor MPs have broken ranks to say Australia must use its political influence to urge Israel to agree to a ceasefire, but Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has remained fixed in his position, repeating in Parliament even today that Israel has a right to defend itself and the way that it does matters, and we must distinguish between Hamas and Palestinian citizens. But the cracks within the Labor Party are starting to get bigger as the pressure on government mounts, thanks to the rallies and the thousands of phone calls and emails that Palestinian supporters have flooded Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong's office with. Despite her using the same language as Albanese for the past month, yesterday Wong, for the first time, called for steps towards a ceasefire in Gaza. But on Sunday, she said, "Just an enduring peace, Palestinians and Israelis living within internationally recognised borders is the only pathway for security both for Israel and for Palestinians. What I would say is we all want to take the next steps towards a ceasefire, but it cannot be one-sided. Hamas still holds hostages, Hamas is still attacking Israel." In lieu of government sanctions on Israel, which would be a financial blow to its economy and one way to force its hand, activists have blockaded Port Melbourne and Port Botany in Sydney to delay or turn around Israeli-owned cargo ships. Organisers said the Israeli shipping company Zim is in every port of the world. That means we can fight them in every port of the world and bring them to their knees. Start hitting them economically where it hurts. So, as more people join rallies and direct actions here and overseas, global pressure for a ceasefire rises.